All right, welcome back to the channel, everybody. Hope you all are having a good morning here. Today, I've been meaning to talk about a player that I was a huge fan of growing up in the 90s. Well, not growing up in the 90s, but I was a huge fan of in the 90s. Played for the Denver Nuggets, and I've been saying it for years, and people laugh in my face. And then I see a video that pops up that apparently this person saw exactly what I see, because it's called Mahmoud Abdul Rauf, the Steph Curry prototype who is blackballed by the NBA. And man, if that statement isn't true, I don't know what is. Because no, this guy was not Steph Curry, but wow. Talk about the prototype for the Steph Curry type player. And he was removed from the league way too soon. But I'm sure we're gonna understand that as this video goes along. I know all about it, but I'm sure there's even some stuff I'm gonna learn about this. So I'm excited to watch this with you guys. This one is called, this one is by a channel called Forgotten Player Profiles. And from my experience with this channel is he's gonna just cover Rauf's entire career. So this should be pretty cool. But as always, I'm going to leave the original video down in the description below if you want to watch it without my commentary. It's about 23 minutes long. And for everybody else who wants to come along with me, I ask you to leave a like to this video to get it out there and push it out. And I'd really appreciate it. And yeah, that's all I got to say. Let's watch this together. Here we go.
Let me tell you one of the things I did like about being in Denver, playing with Mahmoud Abdul Rauf. And people that see Steph now, it remind me of him.
When you think of pure scores, his name may not be the first to come to mind, but once his name does come up, you know he's well deserving of that distinction. He was lightning quick with one of the prettiest jump shots in the league, and he wasn't afraid to use that jump shot from 25 or 30 feet away from the hoop, because he knew he was probably going to make it. But if you got up tight on him, he'd cross the defender out of his shoes, or drive past him only to pull a great shot fake to give himself a wide open look as the defender flew by. But you definitely didn't want to foul him, as him at the free throw line was the closest thing to guaranteed points. So there wasn't much teams could do to slow down Mahmoud Abdul Rauf. And unfortunately, it would be controversy that brought his NBA career to an abrupt halt.
Yeah, when you want to talk about pure shooters, man, he's at the top of my list. He is just a pure shooter. Beautiful shot, beautiful mechanics, accurate as all hell. Man, yeah, me and my brother, we loved this guy growing up. Like, we loved watching him, and nobody talked about him. Nobody gave him any credit, but we would watch every Denver game we could and just be in complete awe at what he was doing.
But before that occurred, he was leading an up-and-coming Denver Nuggets team in scoring year after year, which wasn't a huge surprise, after he had become one of the most prolific scorers in NCAA history. But on top of his career being cut short due to controversy, the same controversy is the first thing attached to his name in basically every headline. So his incredible on-court play has become overshadowed and forgotten over the years.
Yep.
But during his short prime, Mahmoud Abdul Rauf was must-watch basketball. And that's why he's the topic of today's episode. Let's jog your memory. A native of Gulfport, Mississippi, Mahmoud Abdul Rauf had an obstacle to overcome from a young age, yet one that also helped him in a way. Abdul Rauf suffered from the brain disorder known as Tourette's syndrome, which causes tics and involuntary movements, but he wouldn't be diagnosed until the age of 17. Tourette's can also lead to the brain creating seemingly unattainable goals of perfection.
Wow.
And this was most present in Abdul Rauf's brain when he was on the basketball court.
I didn't know about that part. I only knew about the physical aspects of it. And yeah, me and my brother didn't understand what Tourette's was back then, but we didn't care. Yeah, he looked a little weird, and a lot of people, if you ever brought up Abdul Rauf, like, people would just make fun of him and do like the physical, like, shoulder ticks and stuff. But it was, to us, it was like, all right, well, whatever, dude. That's just part of who he is. The guy's a hell of a basketball player.
But this would lead to a meticulous need to perfect every aspect of his shot.
Yeah, I can see that.
To make sure it was nothing but net every time. Abdul Rauf would become a Mississippi basketball legend during his time at Gulfport High School. He would lead the Admirals to multiple state championships during his time with the team, and his individual accolades would pile up, as he was voted a parade second-team All-American as a junior, as well as Mississippi's Mr. Basketball in 1987. Then in 1988, he would average 29.9 points and 5.7 assists, while again being named Mr. Basketball and a McDonald's All-American. And after the dominant high school career that he had, he would be one of the most sought-after recruits in the nation. And he would choose to go just down the road and attend Louisiana State under Hall of Fame head coach Dale Brown. And during his time playing for the Tigers, Abdul Rauf would only add to his legend. The Tigers were one of the worst defensive teams in the nation, but when it came to offense and scoring, they were top 5, as the addition of Abdul Rauf alongside senior Ricky Blanton gave the Tigers elite scoring, and overall their starting lineup would combine to average over 82 points per game. But it would be Abdul Rauf who stole the show, as he would turn in arguably the greatest freshman season in NCAA history. He would play in all 32 games and average over 30 points per game, as he finished second in the nation in scoring, behind only Hank Gathers. He shot over 48% from the field and nearly 39% from 3, as he was attempting nearly 7 threes per game just a few years after the NCAA had even adopted the three-point line. He scored less than 20 points just 3 times and had some performances that were straight out of a video game, like dropping 48 points in his 3rd career game versus Louisiana Tech.
Okay. 18 for 29. Brilliant. 62%. 4 for 7 threes. So that's 57% from 3. 8 for 12. He actually shot bad free throws. That's not the normal him. 48 points, 5 rebounds, 3 fouls, 4 assists, 5 turnovers. That's like the one real weak point there. And a steal. Damn, man. Yep. That's Mahmoud.
Tech. Or giving Florida 53 just 4 days later. Or maybe when he gave Tennessee.
Oh, let's look at that. Nice. See, there you go. 94% free throws. That's more like him. That's more like him. Oh, boy. So 16 for 19, shot 55, 62%. My God. My God. Turnover is still a little high. 4 steals, so he literally, he balanced that out there. All right. What's the last one here? 61%, 16 for 26, shooting 50%, 86% from the line, 0 turnovers, 3 steals. So the steals was wow, man. Yeah, he was doing that every night. 0 turnovers. That's awesome.
50 in a February 10th win. Or how about his career high of 55 with 9 threes?
Oh, snap. Okay. 19 for 36, 53%. Wow, he shot 20 threes that game, but he hit 9 out of 20, so shoot all you want. 45%, 89% from the line, and 4 turnovers that time. Oh, and I got that last... No, I did get that last one right. Okay. Yeah, no, 4 turnovers that time, 2 steals, 5 assists. Jesus.
Versus Ole Miss in March. Okay, I'll stop, but point is, it was borderline unfair what he was doing to some teams. And when it was all said and done, he had set the single-season freshman scoring record with 966 points, which still stands today.
Wow.
LSU had finished the regular season at a respectable 20-10, but they lost their final 3 games to end the year, including losing to Tennessee in the first round of the SEC tournament, even though Abdul Rauf scored 40. So they didn't have a lot of momentum entering the NCAA tournament, where they would play UTEP and their star point guard Tim Hardaway. And even though Abdul Rauf scored a game-high 33, he would go just 1 of 8 from beyond the arc, as LSU would get bounced in the first round. But Abdul Rauf's historic freshman season ended with him being named to the first team All-SEC, as well as SEC Player of the Year, and even a consensus first-team All-American selection, behind averages of about 30 points, 4 assists, and 1.5 steals per game. One thing LSU was missing in 1989 was size, as no one in the starting lineup stood taller than 6'7", and they did a pretty good job addressing that, as they would welcome 7-foot sophomore center Stanley Roberts back to the team after sitting out his freshman season due to academic ineligibility, and also bring in a highly touted 7'1" freshman named Shaquille O'Neal. Abdul Rauf's scoring would drop by a couple points, but this is to be expected when you have 2 of the nation's top big men on the court. Nonetheless, he would still be 7th in the nation in scoring, with nearly 28 a game, as part of a great trio with Roberts and...
So that's freshman Shaq right there.
O'Neal. He would shoot close to 8 threes per game and still hit almost 36% of them, while also shooting 91% from the free throw line. He would hit a career high and school record 10 threes in a February 10th win versus Tennessee as well.
Let's just be real. If this was nowadays, he would have been drafted straight out of high school.
After going unranked the majority of Abdul Rauf's freshman year, LSU opened the year ranked number 2. But this would be as high as they'd get, as they would lose to Kansas during the NIT in their second game of the year. Overall, they would finish the regular season at 22-7, which would include a couple highlight wins, like defeating eventual national champion UNLV, as well as defeating Loyola Marymount 148-141 in overtime. LSU would again lose in the first round of the SEC tournament, this time to Auburn, and would draw Villanova in the first round of the NCAA tournament, who they would defeat in a modest performance from Abdul Rauf, as he would score just 16 points on 50% shooting to help push LSU through to a second-round matchup versus Georgia Tech and their lethal weapon 3 trio. This would be a very close game that saw all 5 LSU starters score 13 points or more. But the defense keyed in on Abdul Rauf, and he also just couldn't get his shot to drop, as he finished with just 13 points on 5 of 15 shooting, and would foul out late in the game, as LSU lost by 3 points to end Abdul Rauf's season, a season in which he repeated as SEC Player of the Year, and would again be named First Team All-SEC and a consensus First Team All-American, behind averages of about 28 points, 2 assists, and 1.5 steals per game. There wasn't much else Abdul Rauf could do to improve his already high draft stock, so after just 2 seasons, he would declare for the NBA draft, at the time leaving LSU as the 6th leading scorer in program history, having scored at least 30 points in 28 games, including 4 games with 50 or more.
With the 3rd pick in the 1990 NBA draft, the Denver Nuggets select Chris Jackson from LSU.
The Denver Nuggets were coming off a 43-39 season with a playoff appearance, but were now in a transition period, as the Nuggets chose not to re-sign franchise legend Alex English, and also traded point guard Fat Lever to Dallas in the offseason. But even as high of a pick as he was, the Nuggets already had a shoot-first point guard in Michael Adams, who would start over Abdul Rauf during the 91 season. The Nuggets also made a couple other important moves that defined their 91 season, in trading for the Lakers' Orlando Woolridge in August, then hiring former Loyola Marymount head coach Paul Westhead in September. The 91 Nuggets are one of the most interesting teams in NBA history. Under Westhead, they ran a run-and-gun offense that saw them become the highest-scoring team in the NBA, at nearly 120 points per game, while only making 300 three-pointers all season. But these weren't the Denver Nuggets, they were the Enver Nuggets, because they had no D, as they would allow nearly 131 points per game, which included a 162-158 loss to Golden State in the first game of the year.
They were like my 05, 06, 07 Suns before. You know, this was like a prototype for that. Oh my God, look at that score. 149 to 108. Oh man. Yeah, it was fun to watch though. They were incredibly fun to watch. Their running gun offense was fantastic. It was second to only like Showtime Lakers.
Then allowing 107 first half points to Phoenix a week later in a 173-143 loss. All in all, they allowed at least 100 points in every game this year, while allowing less than 110 3 times and more than 150 9 times.
9 times!
Abdul Rauf would have setbacks this year, as he missed 15 games due to an injured foot and also gained 30 pounds over the course of the year. However, he would still score in double figures in 45 games and notch at least 30 points in 4 games, as he would finish 4th on the team in scoring among players who played enough games to qualify, and would also finish 2nd in assists. Additionally, his scoring would be 5th among rookies, as he would be named 2nd team All-Rookie. But as exciting as the Nuggets were offensively, their playstyle didn't translate to wins, as their 20-62 record would be the worst in the league, and Abdul Rauf's rookie season ended with him averaging about 14 points, 2 rebounds, and 3 assists per game. The Nuggets had no defense, so what do they do in the 91 draft? They select the best defensive prospect in Georgetown's Dikembe Mutombo. The team's top 2 scorers from the year before were both now on new teams to start the 92 season. But Abdul Rauf still wouldn't find himself as a starter, as that role now belonged to newly acquired Winston Garland. But it didn't help that Abdul Rauf was still overweight and out of shape, as he was reportedly really struggling with the fame and attention that comes with being an NBA player. And to try and improve his state of being, he began studying the teachings of Malcolm X, and would convert to Islam at some point in 1991. And it's understandable that the pressure was becoming a lot, as in just his second year in the league, he was already being labeled by some as a bust, as Mutombo was quickly becoming the face of the franchise, and Abdul Rauf was fading into the background. Abdul Rauf would play in 81 games this year, but saw a minutes decrease, which in turn led to a statistical decrease, as his numbers dropped across the board, yet he would still be the only non-starter to average double figures. He would again score in double figures in 45 games, but wouldn't crack 30 points once this year. The Nuggets were averaging over 20 points less than the previous year, and were now a bottom 5 scoring offense. And although their defense had improved, they were still in the bottom 10 in the league, as they would finish the year at 24-58. And for the regular season, Abdul Rauf...
I don't remember them being that bad that year. Wow.
Averaged about 10.5 points, 1.5 rebounds, and 2.5 assists per game. Changes were occurring in Denver, as going into the 93 season, they had a new coach in franchise legend Dan Issel, and had drafted a couple franchise mainstays in LaFonso Ellis and Bryant Stith, as well as traded for high-flying point guard Robert Pack in the offseason. But the biggest news was that Garland was gone, and Abdul Rauf had dropped about 25 pounds, and was looking a lot more like the player who dominated the NCAA. And his offseason efforts were rewarded with the starting point guard duties, and Denver wouldn't regret this decision. Abdul Rauf played and started in 81 games, and would lead the team in scoring and assists, and after shooting about 41.5% over his first 2 years, he shot 45% from the field and over 35% from 3 this year, and his 93.5% from the free throw line was second in the league. He would have 70 games in double figures, including 4 games with 30 or more, and his much improved season saw him voted as the NBA's most improved player, and the Nuggets were getting better, as they had improved to a respectable 36-46 record, but would still miss the playoffs. Another interesting highlight of Abdul Rauf's career occurred during All-Star Weekend, where he participated in the dunk contest, even though he had never dunked in an NBA game. Reportedly, he was invited to participate after Nuggets general manager Bernie Bickerstaff sent the league footage of him dunking in practice. But for the season, he would average a career-high 19.2 points, 3 rebounds, and 4 assists per game. So I know I've been referring to him as Mahmoud Abdul Rauf.
Yeah, this is important. Because if you guys were collecting cards back in the day, you might have a rookie card of Mahmoud Abdul Rauf without realizing it.
Entire video. But up until this point, he was actually known as Chris Jackson, his birth name. But due to his conversion to Islam, he would change his name to Mahmoud Abdul Rauf prior to the 94 season, which would loosely translate to elegant and praiseworthy, most merciful, and most kind.
Wow.
The 94 Nuggets featured an underrated starting lineup, as all 5 starters put up 12 points or more, and only one shot below 45%, while their bench featured Pack, hard-nosed forward Brian Williams, and rookie Rodney Rogers. Abdul Rauf played another healthy season, as he would appear in 80 games. His scoring dropped slightly, although he would still lead the team. However, his assists went up slightly to finish second on the team. His shooting had improved to 46% from the field, and he now led the league, shooting 95.6% from the charity stripe. Mutombo had become a defensive force, as he averaged over 4 blocks per game for the first time in his career, en route to leading the Nuggets to a top 10 defense. Abdul Rauf would have 71 games in double figures this year, and 3 with at least 30. The Nuggets would hover around 500 the whole season.
Guys, look at that play. Watch this. Watch how smooth this is.
And 3 with at least 30. The Nuggets would hover around 500 the whole season, but their 42-40 record would squeak them into the playoffs as the 8th seed, where the 63-19 Seattle Supersonics were waiting for them. The series would start
this was a hell of a rivalry.
Expected, as the Sonics won the first 2 games by double digits, as Abdul Rauf scored just 7 points on 3 of 12 shooting in game 1.
And this is so they were up 2-0, and this is back when it was 3 to win. So best of 5.
As Abdul Rauf scored just 7 points on 3 of 12 shooting in game 1, then scored 15 on 5 of 15 shooting in game 2. The Nuggets made it a series with the game 3 blowout, where Abdul Rauf would score just 10 points on 3 of 8 shooting. And then the Nuggets surprisingly tied the series with the game 4 win, in which Abdul Rauf had just 5 points on 2 of 7 shooting. And then the Nuggets would make history in game 5, as they would become the first 8 seed to defeat a 1 seed in the playoffs, after winning 98-94, even though Abdul Rauf continued to struggle with just 8 points on 3 of 10 shooting, as he would finish 6th on the...
I'm assuming that was Gary Payton guarding him, And that would explain why he was struggling with shooting.
Team with just 9 points per game this series and only dish out 10 assists across the 5 games. The Nuggets got the Jazz in the second round, and Abdul Rauf would get a chance to redeem himself. And for the most part, he would, as he led the team in scoring. However, he barely shot 40% from
now he's going against another great point guard defender in John Stockton.
Field in a 7-game loss to Utah. The Nuggets took the same approach as they did in the first round, as they would drop the first 3 games before winning the next 3, but then would lose Game 7. Abdul Rauf scored 16 in Game 1, followed by a postseason career high of 23 in Game 2. He would then score 20 in Game 3 on 44.4% shooting, which was his highest mark of the postseason. He would then score just 6 points on 2 of 10 shooting in the Nuggets' first win of the series, but would dish a postseason career high 6 assists. He would redeem himself with a 22-point performance in Game 5, but then score just 9 in Game 6, and finish the series with a 14-point performance in Game 7. So it wasn't the end the Nuggets were hoping for.
But props for that young team to take the Utah Jazz to 7 games. That's very impressive. This is the Stockton and Malone Utah Jazz with Sloan.
But the fact that they were within 1 game of a conference finals appearance with their top scorer playing poorly led to some optimism around the years to come. But for the regular season, Abdul Rauf averaged about 18 points, 2 rebounds, and 4.5 assists per game. The Nuggets continued to load up as they brought back virtually the same team, but had also signed sharpshooter Dale Ellis and drafted Fab 5 member Jalen Rose. Denver would experience a couple significant losses though, as after just 6 games, they would lose LaFonso Ellis for the season to a knee injury. And then Pack would be lost for the year in mid-February, also to a knee injury. The Nuggets were deep, as they had 7 players average at least 11 points, and Abdul Rauf would lead the way with 16 per game. And although his scoring again dropped, he would shoot 47% from the field. However, Abdul Rauf had also surprisingly began the year coming off the bench, with Pack acting as the starting point guard, until his injury put Abdul Rauf back in the starting lineup. And Abdul Rauf would still score at least 30 points 5 times and would shoot over 38% from 3. About a month before the Pack injury, with the Nuggets sitting at 18-16, head coach Dan Issel resigned, as he didn't like the person he was turning into. He would be replaced by assistant Gene Littles, but the Nuggets would go 3-13 under Littles. So GM Bickerstaff would step in for the final 22 games, in which the Nuggets would go 20-12, and again sneak into the playoffs as an 8th seed at 41-41. The Nuggets would face the Spurs and MVP David Robinson in the first round, as it looked to be a great matchup between the best offensive big man and Dikembe Mutombo, who had won his first Defensive Player of the Year award this season. And although Robinson would average just 19 points on less than 43% shooting, Mutombo would be in foul trouble every game, including fouling out of Game 3 after just 30 minutes of play.
I mean, that's the price to pay to find a way to keep David Robinson scoring that little. Yeah. I would actually like to go back and watch some of those games, because I bet we'll be watching some of the best defense we've ever seen, big man to big man.
As the Spurs, who were just an overall better team, swept the Nuggets, with 2 wins coming by at least 16 points. Abdul Rauf's playoff woes would continue for the most part, as he would have 8 points on 1 of 8 shooting off the bench in Game 1, then as a starter respond with 21 on 7 of 13 shooting in Game 2, before finishing the series with 11 points on 4 of 12 shooting in Game 3. And for the regular season, he would average about 16 points, 2 rebounds, and 3.5 assists per game. Going into 96, the Nuggets had traded Pack to Washington, but Ellis would make his return during the season. And aside from bringing back all their key pieces, they had also added athletic forward Antonio McDyess in the draft.
Remember McDyess.
Bickerstaff would coach the team for the entire year, but they would finish just 35-47. Abdul Rauf would play just 57 games this year, but put together his best season in those 57 games, as he tied his career high with 19.2 points, while dishing out a career high 6.8 assists. He also shot a career high 39.2% from 3, as he was making more than 2 per game. Additionally, he would again lead the league in free throw percentage at 93%, and he had his best games this year, like a career-high 51 points and a career-high 9 made threes in a December 12th win versus Utah, as well as a 30-point and career-high 20-assist performance in a November 15th win versus Phoenix.
Damn. Against my Suns, huh? My Barkley-led Suns.
But the bigger story around Abdul Rauf was happening before the games tipped off, as he had been refusing to stand for the national
This is
anthem.
where it all goes downhill, everybody. So, he switched he got into Islam. That was his faith of choice. Changed his name. And this is where this story gets messed up.
Abdul Rauf was happening before the games tipped off, as he had been refusing to stand for the national anthem all year. Yet this hadn't been an issue of national attention throughout the season. But then in early March, the story started to get picked up by radio shows and newspapers. And when asked directly about his reasoning, Abdul Rauf would tell reporters that he believed the American flag is a symbol of oppression and tyranny, and had been that for a long time, which would lead to him receiving death threats. The league would respond by suspending Abdul Rauf indefinitely on March 12th for not following a clearly defined rule stating that players are expected to stand in a dignified line during the national anthem, and this suspension would result in him losing over $31,000 per game. Interestingly, Hakeem Olajuwon, who is a devout follower of the Muslim religion, expressed confusion around Abdul Rauf's decision, as it was Olajuwon's understanding that being Muslim entails respecting the culture and tradition of the country you're in. Abdul Rauf's suspension lasted just one game, as he would come to a compromise with the league that he would have to stand, but would have the option to put his head down and close his eyes, which he would begin doing there on out, often reciting an Islamic prayer during the anthem. And head coach at the time, Bickerstaff, would later refer to the situation as a distraction, while Abdul Rauf's reputation was now extremely tarnished. He would come back to play 4 more games this year, even scoring 27 versus Toronto on March 18th. But after 6 minutes of play in a March 21st loss to New Jersey, he was shut down for the remainder of the year with a sore foot. And in his 56 games, he would average about 19 points, 2.5 rebounds, and 7 assists per game. During the offseason, Abdul Rauf was traded to the Sacramento Kings for Sarunas Marciulionis. The Kings featured perennial all-star Mitch Richmond and were coming off their first playoff appearance in over a decade. Abdul Rauf would play well for the Kings, as he appeared in 75 games and started 51 of them, and would find himself as the second leading scorer on the team, behind Richmond, while shooting over 44% from the field and over 38% from deep. He would still have 50 games in double figures and score at least 30 points twice. But the 90s Kings didn't have much success, as this year they finished 34-48 and missed the playoffs, with Abdul Rauf averaging about 13.5 points, 1.5 rebounds, and 2.5 assists per game. Unfortunately, Abdul Rauf, who continued to get negative fan reception, saw his role decrease significantly in 1998. He did suffer from a corneal ulcer this year, which forced him to miss significant time, but still, after being the team's second leading scorer the previous year, he would see action in just 31 games this season with 0 starts, averaging about 17 minutes per game, while logging a lot of DNPs, so he couldn't really get into the flow of the game, with his opportunities to play being so sporadic, and in turn would average his lowest numbers across the board, as he would crack double figures just 9 times this year. And the Kings continued to struggle, finishing at just 27-55 and missing the playoffs. And Abdul Rauf finished the year averaging about 7.5 points, 1 rebound, and 1 assist per game. Abdul Rauf's contract was set to expire, and the controversy continued to follow him, as his chances of signing on to another NBA team seemed non-existent.
All right, real quick. I can't ignore the topic, so I might as well chime in real quick. It's a complicated one. This is a really complicated one. I think it started out innocent enough. If he didn't want to stand for the national anthem because of his faith, that's one thing. It was when he was asked why, and then he basically just shat all over America. That's where this became a problem. Because, he's here in America. He's an American. He's working in America, getting paid in US dollars. That's where all the hate really came from. There has been a ton. That's why Hakeem Olajuwon chimed in. Muhammad Ali, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. There's been a ton of famous athletes who were Muslim and are Muslim, and it's never been a problem. But the difference here was that it wasn't about the spiritual aspect anymore. It was about him bashing the country that he's living and working in. And I think that was a big boo-boo. That was a big boo-boo. If you would have just said, my faith dictates that I'm I'm loyal only to my faith and not to a country. Something along those lines is just off the top of my head. I think it could have been looked past and it wouldn't have been so controversial, and people would have just been like, all right, how about the compromise? You stand, but you don't put your hand on your heart, and then this would have been forgotten, I feel. But once he came out with that statement, it was over. Everybody wanted to hate him. So you got all the people who wanted to hate him for the faith reasons already, because that happens, unfortunately, in this world. Not that I agree with it, but that is what happens. But then you have all Americans who are watching the National Basketball Association here in America, who are now pissed off. They feel offended as well. But anyways, that's all I wanted to chime in on it. I really didn't want to begin with, but I figure I might as well just make it clear. I'm all about everybody believing in whatever they want to believe in, but also, like, I am an American. I live in America. I've worked in America. I've earned US dollars. I own a house in America, So even though I can see problems in our society, I will never truly bash our country and say I'm like anti-American. How could I? I am an American. I live here. And I feel like that simple logic blew right over his head, because if that's the case and you hate it so much here and you hate this country so much, you have every right to leave the country. And that's part of the freedom of being an American. Anyways, I'm just going to stop there. Let's get back to basketball. Sorry, everybody.
Continued to follow him, as his chances of signing on to another NBA team seemed non-existent. So at just 29 years old, he opted to go play for a professional club in Turkey. However, he would not even finish the season, as he would instead choose to retire, as he lost interest in the game of basketball, partially due to the team he was playing on being poorly run. Abdul Rauf.
He's going to make a comeback somewhere in here and play some Big Three ball. I watched some of those games.
Retired for the 2000 season before making a brief comeback when he signed with the Vancouver Grizzlies before the 01 season.
Oh, wow.
He would appear in 41 games for a 23-59 Grizzlies team, and although he would play just under 12 minutes per game, he would be tied as the top scorer off the bench.
Wow, I don't even remember
this. And would shoot a career-high 48.8% from the field. The season would end with him averaging about 6.5 points, half a rebound, and 2 assists per game. He would be a free agent at the end of the year and would never play in the NBA again.
Here it is,
He would continue playing professionally overseas until around 2011, and has most recently been playing well in the Big Three League. So Mahmoud Abdul Rauf's NBA career is clouded by one major controversy. It would end up being the nail in the coffin of his time in the league. But before his reputation was tarnished, he was one of the most talented offensive players in the NBA. He could shoot from anywhere, was one of the fastest players on the court, and possessed a killer crossover, as well as one of the best shot fakes of all time.
Yeah.
He could fly under the radar because he never had the insane stats that he put up in college. But it wasn't to say that he was no longer capable of that. It was just not what was needed on the Nuggets teams, which he excelled on. But he was still a leading scorer on a good NBA team for years, and was relatively efficient for the type of player he was, and the amount of long-range shooting he liked to do. But he could also slash and finish at the rim. And if you fouled him, you might as well just add 2 points, because he was automatic from the line. Abdul Rauf is the epitome of a player that was before his time.
He was.
As there's no telling the damage he would have done in today's NBA. Unfortunately, his on-the-court performance often takes a backseat to his controversy. But if you're strictly talking about the basketball playing career of Mahmoud Abdul Rauf, he was one of a kind. But that's it for today's episode. Hope you enjoyed it, and don't forget to subscribe for more.
I did enjoy it, and sir, I am subscribed. I love this channel. Real quick, anybody who, if you enjoyed this video, I highly suggest you go over, subscribe to this channel, and check out the backlog, because he does player profiles like this for so many players, and I think it's awesome. It's awesome work what he's doing. When I found him, he had very few subs. Now he's at about 29,000 subs, so that's awesome to see. Good work out there, man. Mahmoud, if he played right now for the Golden State Warriors, he'd fit right in. That play style is perfect for him. Problem is he was about 20 years too early. The game wasn't ready for a player like him. So controversy aside and everything, as a basketball player, he will always be one of my favorite basketball players I grew up watching. It's hard to capture it with highlights and stats, but back then, if you would watch the speed of his play and the perfection of his shot and his mad handles, man, it was easy to fall in love with his gameplay style. But anyways, everybody, thanks for watching. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your morning and a wonderful afternoon. I'll see you all tonight in the next video. Leave this one a like if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to the channel if you want more. If you do, I'll see you later on tonight for the next video, okay? All right, everybody. Be safe, have fun. Peace out.